I think that the mischief of the federal government is very clear, that when the COVID numbers started to drop or have dropped drastically, and we've not had serious incidents or a serious rise in well over a month, that the government then decides to lock down once civil society says enough. I think it's very clear the reason why government said so. Because they don't want people out on the streets, because they don't want to hear dissenting voices. But either way they do it, they will hear Nigerians loud and clear.
And how would they hear Nigerians loud and clear? There's some ban on gatherings, you know, even where it's in an enclosure, you have just 50 people. And if you're calling out Nigerians, we have over 200 million Nigerians, and I bet your call is on every Nigerian to come and join in all the protests and all of that. So how are they going to do that? The
call is on every Nigerian to join, and there are ways to join without being non-COVID compliant. And I think that's what they're failing to take into cognizance. Nigerians are tired. We are tired. There is not a single front page news that is good news in Nigeria today. It's insecurity, it's banditry, it's kidnapping. It's one form of corruption or violence or the other. We will not continue to live this way. And so whether the government likes it or not, we will register our displeasure. And all the way from next week on to Democracy Day, you will hear Nigerians loud and clear, whether in the streets, in their homes, in small gatherings, or in groups. You want groups of less than 50, you will get them, but then you will get groups all over the country in every single corner, street corner, local government area, speaking out against what is going on in this country.
All right, Worsening, I want to just, talk about the government. Don't you think that maybe this time the government is being proactive by taking the decision of locking down again to prevent what's happening in India and in Brazil from happening in Nigeria, and possibly also because of the fact that if we don't take proactive steps now, we may just become the Nigeria that was predicted, that people will die of COVID-19 all over the streets.
Well,
You are laughing.
No, okay. But I would like to advise the government to be proactive to stopping killings and not stopping I don't get it.
Thank you.
COVID-19 is coming down. The lessons we learned from the lockdown, we don't want to learn it again. During the lockdown was the highest level of mass atrocity, gender-based violence, rape that went at the level that we cannot even record. You are locking down the country again? Because civil society has decided. The truth of the matter is this: a people united can never be undermined. Right now, Nigerians across the length and breadth of this country are angry because they've lost someone. Some of their colleagues have been kidnapped, killed, raped. And someone said that because India or Brazil had cases, meanwhile, we have Indians coming to the country. We have not stopped them. We have not banned airlines coming from India. We have not banned Indian citizens coming to the country. And you are locking down a country. We just had 49 cases yesterday. And yesterday you are locking down because you know that you don't want to embarrass the government. Because they always have a way of saying, when people gather, you are embarrassing the government. The government does not think that with the killings, they're embarrassing the people. Across the globe, Nigeria has become... See, God bless Nigeria. God bless Nigeria, but we must take responsibility. Right now, the destiny of Nigeria is in our hands. We must, as a people, unite to save Nigerian state.
Austin, aren't you worried? I beg your pardon, Connie. Aren't you worried that if you go ahead with this planned protest, we saw what happened last year with the NSAS protest, and the government is, insisting on this lockdown at this moment, meaning movement is supposed to be restricted. Are you worried that if Nigerians come out, if you are able to pull Nigerians out of their houses for this protest, that the government may unleash the kind of, actions we saw in Lekki during the NSAS protests?
in our statement we released yesterday, we categorically stated that if the government security agencies can crack down on protesters, they should use the same energy to crack down on insecurity. Why are we protesting? Because we see that the mass atrocity, the killings, is too much. We cannot begin to count them. These are faces of individuals, our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our children being killed on a daily basis. Yesterday, over 40 kidnapped in Castina, the home state of the president. And it goes across the length and breadth of this country. And somebody is locking down to go after protesters. It will be insane. Gather the energy. Put your ass together. Because if you deal with insecurity, the protest will not hold. Because the only job of the protest is to call attention of the presidency. In fact, all of those we elected. In fact, you have a responsibility. If you are hearing me now, I speak to you, that you listen to your conscience. We elected you to protect us and not to kill us. You've got a responsibility in this moment to take action. Organize your house together and nip these killings in the bud and not on protesters.
Now, I saw that press release that the Civil Society Joint Coalition released, and I saw a barrage of names of civil society groups. Is everyone actually on the same page with you? Everyone we see on that list?
Every single organization that is on that list put in their names, and those names were gathered in less than 24 hours, which means if we had let the call out even longer, that you would have had even more civil society organizations from across the country. Because at the end of yesterday, we still had many civil society organizations saying, why wasn't our name included? But then we had only a 24-hour window period with which to finish signing that statement, and they did.
And so many are asking, why did it take the civil society so long to actually decide to, face the Nigerian government to say, hey, enough is enough?
You remember that in February, we had set out a statement. We had given a press conference where we had 75 civil society organizations say that enough is enough. President Buhari, you need to sit up, or civil society will be forced to go out and make you sit up. And we spoke as well to the National Assembly and the State Houses of Assembly. We said that, exactly as Austin has said, protect us. But then we see that their allegiance is neither to the Constitution of Nigeria nor the Nigerian state, but to politics and to political apparatus of government. That we will not condone as a people.
Biedu, are you beginning to think of, the processes of the protest that you are now calling for, putting in consideration the restriction, the newly announced restrictions, which certainly will affect the protest one way or the other? Are there new strategies as to how to achieve these protests?
There are strategies to achieve peaceful, non-violent protests, and we will bring them out in operation. There are also many ways of achieving dissenting opinions in public, and we will bring them out. I think what the government is afraid of is that citizens are finally speaking out about their inefficiency. But the only way they can stop us from doing that is by becoming efficient. Let us see you doing something about the killings, the kidnappings, the insecurity across this nation. Let us see you fulfill your constitutional mandate, which says that the primary purpose of government is the security and welfare of all citizens. Once government begins to fail in fulfilling its constitutional obligation, then it becomes unconstitutional and illegal. And that is what they're becoming, and that they do not seem to see.
How long do you intend to protest for, considering that what you're asking for cannot just be given? It's a process in itself to be seen. I mean, the actions that will be taken will take time to yield fruits, obviously. So how long do you intend to protest for? And are there any immediate demands that you're asking for?
Sanami, 6 years. For 6 years, they have been making efforts. 10 trillion naira gone into security in 6 years. 7 years ago, this man knew he was going to be president. The people in National Assembly knew they would be there. The threats were there 10 years ago. If it's taken them this long to make things worse, because progressively over 6 years things have gotten worse. Insecurity got worse from 2010 to 2019 to 2020. The rates went up by 43% of the fatalities of the insecurity in Nigeria. The first quarter of 2021, the numbers are even higher. We will do what it takes to ensure that we continue to have a country that we can call our own for as long as we need to. And we will not be daunted. What they did in October last year is a shame on Nigeria's government, not just internally, but externally. Your allegiance must be to the Nigerian state. And the Nigerian state is what unites the people. You've divided the people in 6 years. Now we're coming back together and say no more.
We'll come back to you to find out exactly how the country was divided in 6 years, in your own opinion. But let's get Austin's view on this. Austin, listening to the president, he appears to be a man who sounds frustrated, believing that all the effort he has been making to douse the tension, to stop all the criminality, doesn't seem to be yielding any result. And then the government is also blaming some people for sponsoring terror on Nigeria. And he says they are profiling highly placed individuals and businessmen who supposedly are sponsoring terror. Now, isn't that a step that government, that means well for the people should take?
I don't know when the president spoke, or you mean the spokesperson to the president, so that we get it clear. Because the president didn't speak. Maybe I wasn't following.
Of course, the presidential spokesman says the mind of the president.
That is not the president. We elected a president and not a spokesperson. The spokesperson, in my opinion, those comments he made are even inciting. Creating an environment that look as if something else is happening. Nothing is happening. Everyone is just angry. And why are people angry? For one reason. Nip this in the bud. The president, if you have issues, the president needs to come to Nigerians. We elected you. In 2015, President Buhari said it's for everybody. It's for nobody. But now, everybody is complaining. Why don't you come on the side of everybody? President Buhari needs to speak, to say, I've got issues. These are the issues. Former President Jonathan openly announced that his government has been infiltrated by those people who are working against his government. It is time for the president to let us know. Then we can support him. What the presidency or the president needs is that people support by letting us know the truth. The truth will set you free. Not hiding under some individuals who you are appointed to speak to Nigerians. I personally, even though sometimes they say the presidency. Just yesterday we had an attack at the residence of the chief of staff, and the presidency spoke. And the presidency has become, that individual is clear. And I want to also put it on the table that a former Secretary of State, Secretary of to the federal government, did say, when it was asked that the presidency said something, he said, who is the presidency? The question I asked, we know of one president, and he was elected to govern the state of Nigeria, and that person remained President Muhammadu Buhari, not any individual appointed to speak to Nigerians. It is time that we convey. If the president cannot do it, he could use the National Assembly. In fact, the National Assembly should be able to begin to think, even though they have also stated that all of their resolutions are not being respected. And then they begin to ask a question. Who does the president listen to? If the president cannot listen to the National Assembly, he cannot listen to the people, and yet send spokespersons to speak to Nigerians, that's a big challenge for us as a country.
All right, let's look at some specifics. I know this group had earlier asked the president to resign. If not, the National Assembly should begin impeachment processes against the president. If the president is overwhelmed, are you still, if it looks like the president is overwhelmed, are you still asking? Is that one of the demands that the president should resign if he cannot secure Nigeria?
It is one thing that is almost common elsewhere around the world. If you can't do your job, you just step aside.
The president has not said he cannot do his job.
He has not even spoken to us to tell us he can do his job. So, but again, he said they are doing efforts, or they are doing their best. In my lexicon, I know that before you get to the best, there is what they call the good, the better. Well, we haven't seen getting better yet. What we need, you see, let me put it again on the table. The Nigerian military continue to be my pride. They know what to do if given the appropriate support. It doesn't need to be in terms of monetary. There are other political will that need to go in. There are a lot of stories that maybe if we're going to make those statements, it will further incite. Because we do not intend to incite Nigerians. We intend to push the president to engage this and solve this once and for all.
Nigerians
if Aso Rock can be attacked.
Attempted, according to the
What
president.
is attempted?
Yeah, the president
they got to the door, which means they went there. They got in. The Aso Rock the villa area should be the most secure in the state of Nigeria because you have everything there, including monitors.
The presidency says it's a futile attack. It's a futile attempt, a foolish attempt, which was unsuccessful.
But it was an attempt in the villa. I'm saying it's an attempt, which means the folks who did the job went there, but they couldn't gain access. So, I mean, what are we talking about?
Like somebody said earlier, Biodu, looks like the chicken has come home to roost. So now the insecurity we're talking about is not just, not just average Nigerians anymore. So close to the door of the president that the chief of staff's residence, was, let's even say, was attempted for armed burglars to get that close. Or
that boldness, you want to say?
Yes, and that boldness to even make an attempt. Isn't this a good enough time or a good enough wake-up call for this administration?
You would hope that it is, but apparently it is not. When a week ago you had foreigners from Niger on bikes driving through Abuja saying they were on their way to Bauchi, security forces stood back and watched helplessly as they did so. Schools resumed 2 weeks ago. Many of them have been forced to go on midterm after only 2 weeks. But we understand that 2 weeks midterm break is because of the insecurity, that our children are not secure. About 10 years ago or 8 years ago, Sanami, we spoke together in this studio about the Safe School Initiative.
Yeah.
Now, it's not just schools in the Northeast that are unsafe. Schools in Asaba are unsafe. Schools in Lagos, in Ogun, in Zamfara, in Niger are unsafe, in Katsina, in the FCT. In the FCT, where every morning you send your children to school praying that they come back home to you at the end of the day. That is the height of insecurity. If the president doesn't know it, let us tell him. If they went to the villa and it comes out to say the attempt was foolish and unsuccessful, it tells me that the attempt was bold, it was daring, and that they achieved exactly what they wanted to tell to the president that even you are not safe in the safest place in Nigeria. And it is all of your fault because as long as I am not safe, he is not safe as well.
Now, what more can the president do? Nigerians called for a change in service chiefs when things started going bad. The president responded, according to his handlers. Some people called for a change in security architecture. The president said he's doing that. Funding is being given to the military. The president even came out as much to say, shoot anyone who you see carrying AK-47 just there, So isn't that, something a president who shows concern about the insecurity issue should be doing? And now he's even holding talks with service chiefs and everyone who cares to, about Nigeria.
Holding talks with a few people, not with Nigerians. Let me be clear. The Nigerian Army, the Nigerian security forces are well known in Africa to be the best. Go to Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Institute, where they study military formations across the continent, and they will tell you Nigeria, when it comes to tactics, when it comes to our army, we're the strongest. What it lacks is leadership. what the president is unable to provide or has failed to prove to provide in 6 years is leadership. If you cannot provide leadership, there's a point where you need to introspect and ask yourself, am I the leader for the now? And if I am not, bravery sometimes is walking away. It's saying, I don't have what it takes. Otherwise, prove to us that you have what it takes. 6 years, you've not been able to prove that. As a matter of fact, in 6 years, you've taken us downhill. That's a dangerous trajectory. You've got the best army in the world. And it's not all about buying bullets and buying guns. It's not about shooting everyone in sight, because a lot of innocent Nigerians have been killed. And let's not even start with the atrocities that happened with men in the Northeast and how they were brutally killed because we failed to gather intelligence on who terrorists are and who are not. But then let us begin to think that you think a bullet will solve every problem. We are growing increasingly poor every day. That is an indicator for insecurity. The language of the government has always also been that, or anyone will say something that disagrees with this present administration is a mischief maker. Once you begin to silence people, you silence the media, you arrest opposition, you shut people down, you shoot live bullets to unarmed protesters. And you
Which is still being denied anyway.
Haba, what are you denying? That people died during NSARS? Forget Lagos. Think about the numbers we gathered across the country. Think about the evidence that we have of people who were killed. And you're talking to someone who gathers the numbers on the killings of mass atrocities in this country. What are we still denying? First they denied, then they agreed, then they denied again, and then they agreed. What are you denying? What do you agree? And this is also a government who continues to do this. You favored employing people from a certain part of the country more than other parts of the country. While I am a detribalized Nigerian, I am forced to look at these evidences and say, can't we do better as a people? Let's not forget we are Nigerians, first of all, before we're ethnic groups. But they've so divided us around language, around ethnicity, around religion. But Nigerians are beginning to see through the cracks and they're saying enough. First, we are Nigerians and we must protect our national integrity. We're refusing to have a plan B. We're staying in this country. This country must work. And for this country to work, we need leadership. We chose you, we elected you because we believed you had what it takes. If in 6 years you've proven that you don't have what it takes, the National Assembly must begin to act, or even they will start getting called back by their constituents.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, is it just about the presidency? Because everyone seems to be pointing accusing finger, on the president. When we have subnational governments as well, where some of these things are even happening in some of the states in the southeast, for instance, the attack is now on police formations and all that, and one begins to wonder what exactly are the attackers after.
Maybe I would say some level of grievances again, pulling out from what Biodun just said. When agitations are coming up, there's usually certain reasons for it. As Gumi told us, that the bandits are also angry. I don't know why they are angry, but he said they are also angry, that they've been abandoned. So that's a different conversation. You see, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the one responsible for the armed forces, is the one called commander of the armed forces. He appoints the IG of police. He appoints the civil defense commandant and all of those paramilitary agencies. He appoints the DG or whatever it's called of the DSS. The NIA is a very powerful person. The Constitution has put those power on the president, whether it's President Muhammadu Buhari today or former President Jonathan yesterday or any other one tomorrow, as the president. The governors, if even though they can formulate some kind of vigilante groups to do jobs like the Amotekuns and all of that, but the kind of arms they can have access to is limited. Small arms, light weapons. They can't go beyond what the armed forces can use. That is why the ball stops at the table of the president. He is directly responsible for the deployment, appointment. You know, when you talk about just now asking the meetings of service chiefs, meetings of his appointees. And when an appointee suggests something that you don't like, you kill it right there. Because I still believe that the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria do have the capacity, and it should do it now. I believe it. Because it was the same Muhammadu Buhari, then as general, that destroyed the medicine crisis in this country. In 2015, that was the reference point we had. That if he did it before, he can't do it again. And when he assumed power, he mobilized the then service chief, took them to the Northeast. The Northeast became the headquarters of security architecture. But soon, he started on nosedive. And things. So let him remember where he's coming from. If he cannot remember, let him sit with me. I will remind him.
All right.
Okay.
Let's look at you know, your planned action. But just before we do, you said something earlier about how, you know, about development, socio-economic development, and this administration has focused in dealing with the insecurity in Nigeria. It's only focused on military tactics, and we all know that all of these agitations, insurgency came from somewhere, and people, these insurgents and bandits, are able to recruit more people because they can attend to their needs. Why isn't the government looking at those areas? Even the state government that you say are limited can develop their state socioeconomically and help the people rise above interest in you know, criminality, and avoid criminality generally, so that those states can grow.
You're absolutely right. The biggest problem is not about arms and bullets. It's about development. Nigeria still has the most number of out-of-school children in the world. As a matter of fact, over the past 2 years, the number of out-of-school children in the world, in Nigeria, has grown, especially with COVID. When you have out-of-school children in the world, you are underdeveloping your human resource. In a country whose population is going to be doubled by 2050, you're not thinking ahead. Your educational system is not futuristic thinking. You have a high rate of unemployment. This government, when it came in, said, I would focus on agriculture and on mining. Agriculture is still in this rudimentary stage in this country. As a matter of fact, it is no longer safe for farmers to go to the farms. The states where the farmlands are no longer safe for agriculture. Agriculture is still largely undeveloped. Energy was a promise by this government when they were coming in. We cannot have industry without energy. They keep talking about the mix of sources of energy, but then we forget that we have a moribund grid, which they continue to put trillions of naira into, and yields absolutely nothing. So therefore, you think that climate change is coming upon us. We've got desert lands in the core north of the country. Nobody is thinking that we need to create the largest solar farm in Africa that will feed not only the energy needs of Nigerians, but the whole of West Africa as well, because we're meant to be big brother. If you fix energy, you fix education, you fix access to social services, you're able to fix roads. You're dredging the Niger. We also forget that we are dredging oil to the north. But the north, at the core of its needs water. And you must think of what happened in Cape Town just 2-3 years ago when they came to 0.0 of water, that Nigeria is getting close there, where water distressed already. Lake Chad and all of the other dams are rapidly shrinking. And we know part of the problem in the Northeast, it was Lake Chad shrunk to 1/10 of its size. You've also got the lake in Sokoto, and the dam in Sokoto has shrunk to 1/10 of its size. that you need to begin to think, how do we dredge the Atlantic to ensure that we're able to get water and irrigation up to the north, empower agriculture, empower people. Philippines, they export citizens. You've got an economy that is derived on educating citizens, exporting them as medical personnel off to other countries. We don't even have medical personnel. We don't have hospitals. We don't have infrastructure.
All right, Biodun, because we don't have that much time, let's quickly talk about
the protest. Really, I saw in your release that you're asking Nigerians to boycott the May Day celebration. I mean, Democracy Day, which is on the 29th May 2021.
Now June 12th, yes.
Yeah. No, and then you are also saying you are commemorating the 4th National Day of Mourning and Remembrance of Victims of Atrocities on 28th May. So how do you intend to achieve all of this?
Well, this will be the 4th consecutive year in which citizens have come out across the country to hold solemn assemblies to commemorate and respect those who have been victims of mass atrocities across Nigeria, because the government is failing to do so. And it's also a protest to the government to say that we're displeased with the state of affairs. We don't think this is right. Perhaps Austin would like to say a thing or two more about that.
Okay, so how that will be achieved really is the issue now, especially with the lockdown.
The lockdown is a quick intervention by government to stop that happening, which means the government does recognize that the people are truly eager to go on the street in their, because what we're planning is a solemn assembly. We do not intend to mobilize people to be anti-government, but we intend to mobilize people to ask, to demand that government takes action.
Were you planning to have a venue for that, or is it in the individual states? So what's the plan? What's the plan like?
Every state of the
country. You see people holding some solemn assembly, maybe like what we usually do in Abuja and elsewhere in Lagos and everywhere. You see people, we gather, we remember, we call names of people. You call the names
of victims.
We need the names of the victims. We need to put names to those faces, because people you just wake up in the morning, 520 killed in XYZ location. People see 20, but if you put name and you call those names, I don't intend to mention any names so that someone does not say that's my name. You call those names publicly so people acknowledge that the killings, those deaths that we talk about, that are reported on a newspaper, have names.
Human beings.
Human beings, male and female. Then do your policy. Get it into a policy framework and come up with a very good outcome. And then you implement. Listening to people matter a lot in terms of addressing issues. When I see something wrong in the street, I'll be afraid to report. You read on newspaper that people who reported were later, they came after them. So the next person who wished to report wouldn't report. We need that confidence building. We need trust building. The government has got the responsibility. Again, when I say government, it is not just the federal government, it's across the board, because each state has what it takes to empower their citizens. But we may have to come back to the Nigerian Constitution with a call for restructuring to better deal with the menace that this country currently do face. You can't have Kogi with all their abundant mineral resources underneath the earth and becoming one of the poorest states. How? Why?
Let me also say something about the National Day of Mourning. So we are also calling for all media to join with 1 minute silence. Just mute your medium at noon for 1 minute. And all Nigerians as well to join for an hour. The calling out of names is to demand accountability for people who have been killed. Women's groups across the country will also be putting out the shoes of victims to show you that their shoes are empty. They're Nigerians like you and I. We need to be standing today, but no longer stand with us because of the insecurity.
Are you getting involved, parents of those who have been kidnapped as well, maybe the students in particular?
When we're not involving them, they're already asking, where do we speak for our children?